Eagles Entertainment.
The journey to the draft is driven by AAA. AAA, roadside is their strong side. Make AAA a part of your game day today. AAA, go ahead.
With the 25th pick in the NFL Draft, the Philadelphia Eagles select.
You're listening to the Journey to the Draft podcast, driven by AAA.
Welcome to the Journey to the Draft podcast, driven by AAA. I'm your host, Fran Duffy, and we've got a lot to cover here. We're going to just jump right in. Very top of the show, we've got Scout Stories, where the Eagles' Senior Director of College Scouting, Anthony Patch, once again is going to join me here on the show. What other podcast covering the NFL Draft has a current NFL evaluator join the show every single week? I don't know of any other ones except for this one. And we've got Anthony Patch once again to talk about the evaluation process when the Eagles selected Jason Kelce. This was back in 2011, so we're talking almost a decade ago. What was it like scouting Jason when he was at Cincinnati, and how is he projected to the NFL? We'll talk all about that with Anthony Patch at the very top of the show. After that, we're going to go to Saturday Scouting. Myself, Ben Fennell, Dane, Brugler, bunch more Senior Bowl announcements that we're going to go through. We've got our biggest takeaways from another big week in college football. After that, we've got On the Clock. Chris McPherson, C-Mac, is back once again to moderate a debate between Ben, Dane, and I. The topic this week, a very specific trait at the safety spot and who best represent it. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. Fun conversation to wrap things up. And then we're going to end the show with our draft mailbag. Question from you guys at home. We're going to get to a lot here. But before we jump into the show, again, quick reminder, the best way to make the show available for others that are looking for NFL Draft podcasts, you can really do us a solid. Jump on Apple Podcasts, jump on a Stitcher, leave us a rating, leave us a comment. If you leave us a question or a mock draft or a prospect you want to hear more about, leave that in the comment section and we will hit it here on the show. That's exactly what we're going to do to wrap up this early week episode. Now, let's get into the top of the show. It's time for Scout Stories.
Pull up a seat. It's time for Scout Stories.
Well, joining us to go back a little bit into the Wayback Machine, we're going to go back to 2011 here on Scout Stories this week. Anthony Patch, the Senior Director of College Scouting. We're going to talk about Jason Kelce coming out of Cincinnati. And Patch, certainly an interesting evaluation with Jason Kelce just because of kind of the outlier he is in terms of his size and movement along the offensive line. Interested to kind of get your takeaways, your anecdotes from evaluating him during the pre-draft process back in 2011.
Yeah, Jason, talking, we talked to Deshaun. You're talking about an outlier, like you mentioned, just size-wise, it's crazy. I mean, when you look back when I evaluated him and, his size, you can talk to Jason. I've talked to Jason about this too. I mean, his pro day, he played at, 190s, but his pro day, he was like at 280 something, I believe. And so that even drew redder flag, but even at the combine, I believe he was light. And but he was one that was a blue collar kid, a Cleveland kid. He was a walk on at Cincinnati. They didn't know what to do with him right away. I believe they put him at linebacker, and then he finally settled in at center, and just unbelievable. Another guy you always look. So does the size show up on the tape? And never did really. He was never out of position. Always had leverage, and speed speaks for itself. But for his size, to be able to anchor on guys and stuff like that, it never showed as a flaw when you're watching Jason. And so, I'll tell you what, man. Talk about another guy that's just been an alpha, a beast, and a guy for us over the last 9-10 years now. It's just remarkable, and a guy that's been really durable. You talk about does the durability show up at all in it? For the size, and it hasn't at all. And so great find, day 3 pick, and it's just unbelievable. Cincinnati's treated us good.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Day 3 pick, Fran. I mean, we just go back and between him and Brent and Trent Cole, I mean, all day 3 picks, and it's just like, holy cow! I went there 2 years ago and was talking to some of our staff. I said, man, you guys have been really good to us. So I talk about, just hard-nosed kids, all those kids, Cole, Brent, and, just unbelievable. I don't know, we wouldn't have had the success we had without these 3 for sure.
And some programs I feel like just have based on the culture that they've been able to build, those are the kinds of play. What you're getting if you're getting a guy from Cincinnati. I feel like, Temple has kind of garnered that reputation over the course of the last few years too. Like, maybe not a Power 5 school, but you know what you're getting from that program in terms of the kids off the field and their makeup.
Yeah, it's one of those schools, you just don't, even though it's a mid-major program, you just don't sleep on them because there's guys out there every year. The foxhole guys that you can win with, And for, Jason's sake, Trent didn't run well, but every time you throw on the tape, he's in the backfield. And, same thing with Brent. He didn't run well, but, he can block and he can catch, he can flex them out. He proved that. And, Jason was 280 at his pro day, 280 at the combine. He had green numbers across the board. And then those guys, you just go back to the tape and see if it still matches. And, nothing showed up to say he can do it at our level, and he has.
And I love what you said, too, about whether it shows up on the tape or not. And that's, I guess, the takeaway for our listeners for this one is like, I think so often we see, oh, this guy's undersized. So he plays undersized. He's too small, or he's going to have issues. If it doesn't show up on the tape, I mean, it kind of changes the discussion a little bit, right?
Yeah, no question. And he did test well at the combine, but, most people have said, well, he's 280 pounds. He's, 6'2". He's not the ideal height. And, he ran well. And you see that now. His outside runs are unbelievable. His ability to get on screens and locate and pick up, and that was the same way at Cincinnati. I mean, his angles and look to finish. I mean, this guy had grit, nastiness, play, and still does. And you saw that. I can look at my report. I looked at it a couple of days ago, and it's like it could match up to what you're saying now about the kid. I mean, Jason, he's not a kid anymore, but unbelievable combo blocks. Second level, everything, and just the leadership. I mean, he takes ownership. He's a true captain-like guy for us, obviously, and I mean, he's a guy you want in your foxhole for sure.
Well, Patch, really appreciate you joining us once again here on the Journey to the Draft podcast to talk about Jason Kelce. We'll talk to you again soon, man. Thanks so much. Well, cool stuff there from Patch. Really appreciate it every time he jumps on with us here on the Journey to the Draft podcast, driven by AAA. The two big takeaways for me, I thought that it was a really cool point by him, and it was funny referring back to the interview last week about Deshaun Jackson. Not only was he an outlier, Jason Kelce, with his size, but it's important when you're dealing with these guys that have some of those questions, whether it's perceived lack of speed or lack of athleticism or the lack of size in this case with Kelce. Does that impact his ability to be effective on film? Does that show up on film? If he was, 6'2", 280 at center, does he play like a guy who's 6'2", 280 on film? Does he keep completely overwhelmed against bull rushes? Does he struggle to generate any kind of momentum as a run blocker? If that shows up, you can probably guess that that's going to show up later. And that's one of the things we talk about this all the time, not just in terms of like pure size, but when we talk about like hand size and arm length and things like that at other positions. It's not a problem until it's a problem. And I think that when you can kind of make that point with Kelce, even though you would say, oh man, he's smaller for that size or, for that center position, it's not a problem on film. So right now, it's tough to say that that's a real negative working against him. I thought that was a great point there from Anthony Patch. And then the other one, just talking about the center spot in general. Ben and I talked about this in our Under the Hood segment a couple weeks ago in grading centers for the NFL draft and the traits that we prioritize. But those, guys' ability to get out in the perimeter just gives you so much flexibility from a play calling standpoint, not just in the screen game, but all the different pin pull plays and all the different perimeter runs. The Eagles just this week against Cleveland, there were a couple of really good examples, and you can go find that on the Eagles YouTube page on the Eagle Eye in the Sky video that got posted. Just seeing Kelce out in the perimeter. So still at this stage in his career, being able to get out into space, do damage on linebackers, on corners, on safeties, on slots. I mean, just his ability to play in space, really, really impressive for the center spot. So great stuff there from Anthony Patch. Hope you guys have enjoyed this segment. I know I have. It's been really, really fun to catch up with these guys on a weekly basis and talk about current players from when they were coming out of the college ranks. All right, let's get into now stuff that impacted this week. Let's get into Saturday Scouting.
It's time for Saturday Scouting.
All right, well, let's get things going here with Draft Buzz as I welcome in both Dane Brugler and Ben Fennell. Guys, first off, happy Thanksgiving to you both and to your families. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. We'll be back a little bit later before the holidays really kick into gear. But, guys, let's get things going. We've got a bunch more Senior Bowl announcements to kind of comb through. First big one, Florida quarterback Kyle Trask was announced just after our episode last week, and we had Jim Nagy on. He talked about Kyle Trask last week, so make sure you go check out last week's late week episode of the Journey to the Draft podcast. Jim talked about Trask and what he saw from him this season, what he's hoping to see from him down in Mobile. Certainly one of the best senior quarterbacks, if not the best senior quarterback. So big addition there for the Senior Bowl. Let's go to one other quarterback that got announced for the game here. Dane, we'll go to you for Notre Dame quarterback Ian Book. What's your reaction when you see that Book is on the books for going to Mobile?
Yeah, this was a surprise, but I'm happy for Book. He gets the opportunity. He's played well down the stretch for the Irish. He's got a 28-3 record as a starter for Notre Dame. Really like his ability to extend plays with his legs. I think it's probably what he does best. I still think he's a PFA level prospect right now, but maybe he can change the narrative a little bit in Mobile. I don't think the touch, the placement are where you want it necessarily. But like I said, his mobility and ability to extend plays, that's what stands out the most with him.
And then, Ben, we'll go to the next one here as we go to Kellen Mond from Texas A&M. Your thoughts when Kellen Mond, I believe he's a 4-year starter, if not a 3-year starter for Jimbo Fisher. What were your thoughts when you saw that Kellen Mond was going to Mobile?
Yeah, highly coveted recruit that's quietly having a great season with 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They're number 5 in the country. They're really right on the outside of the college football playoff, even without his top receiver and Jamon Osmond opting out of the season. But we were waiting for Mom to develop. And, he was their darling coming in as a 5-star and really kind of struggled through his first couple of years, very inconsistent. But I think the Senior Bowl is a great opportunity for him just to level out his evaluation. He's going to be that day 3 high variance quarterback that a quarterback coach or a coaching staff may say he's got tools and he has a lot of upside. He's going to be in the conversation with, the Ian Books and the Kenny Pickett's and do we want a high variance day 3 or do we want the slow and steady day 3? So I think going down to the Senior Bowl, meeting some of these NFL coaches and just leveling out your play a little bit there. He needs to be consistent. You need to show, hey, I can be a reliable 2 or 3 while I develop. And I think it's a really good opportunity for him.
Well, let's get to it. We got 3 quarterbacks. We've got a couple of running backs to hit on here. And I'll start with North Carolina's Michael Carter, who was announced for the game. Carter, I just studied him and his teammate Javonte Williams late last week. And I really like both guys. I think Carter probably projects best to be an NFL backup, kind of a well-rounded skill set. I like him in pass pro. He's got some upside as a pass catcher. He's got some wiggle and some shake to him. I wouldn't say he's as good at making the first man miss as Williams is, his teammate. But Carter's got some jitterbug attributes that I really like. He's got patience. I like his vision downhill. He can fit in multiple different schemes and wear a lot of hats for an NFL offense. So I like Michael Carter. I'm excited to see him down in Mobile. Another guy from the southern part of the country, Elijah Mitchell from Louisiana. Dane, tell us about the Raging Cajun and what he'll bring to the Senior Bowl.
Well, he's one of the best pass-catching backs in this year's draft, and he might be the favorite to be, who's going to be that first senior running back drafted after Travis Etienne, after Najee Harris. It might be Mitchell. He runs strong. He keeps his feet through tackle attempts. Now, he really benefits from that running back rotation they have going on at Louisiana, but that really helps him have fresh legs. Don't get me wrong, but he's one of the better seniors at the position this year. Really like the run toughness that he offers, and then going back to what he does on third downs, catching the ball in the backfield. That's really what NFL teams like about him.
All right, let's get to the wide receiver position now. Bunch of wide receivers announced in the last week. And we'll start at the top with Tylan Wallace from Oklahoma State. Ben, tell us about the Cowboy receiver down there playing for Mike Gundy.
Yeah, really interesting receiver, productive. He's a little undersized at 6 foot, 185, but he's sudden, he's shifty. Tore his ACL in practice last year, halfway through the season. I thought he was going to come out and declare last year. I had him as a kind of a mid-day 2 pick right there in the 2nd or the 3rd round, but he's a productive player. He can win at every level of the defense. He's a tough player. He blocks well. He has yards after catch ability. He reminds me of a Tyler Lockett style of player that may be a little undersized, but I don't think he has any limitations in his receiving, acclimate.
Another guy, Dane, I know you are a big fan of South Carolina's Shi Smith. He was my one-play takeaway player from last week. Tell us about Shi Smith and what he'll bring down to the Senior Bowl.
Well, he's just a fun player because he never takes a play off. He never half speed. He's always full go. Now, he's a little bit of a roller coaster because he'll make some of the most ridiculous catches you'll ever see. Your one-play takeaway last week, a prime example, but then he'll draw some easy ones or he'll have these double catches that are frustrating. But above all, the toughness, that's what stands out to me. He finishes through contact. He doesn't shy from a battle. When he goes up against corners, he will match them in terms of competitiveness, tenacity, even the emotions. He kind of wears it on his sleeve, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. He's just overall just a fun player. I don't know how reliable he is, but he's a fun player.
Couple of Florida receivers I want to hit on. I'm going to go to each of you for a take on either. Kadarius Toney from Florida, Ben. You've been talking about this guy for like 2 or 3 years. Electric, capital E electric for Kadarius Toney. Take us through your reaction when you saw that he was heading down there to Mobile.
Yeah, it was great to see him. One of the most explosive playmakers in college football, kind of positionless up to this year. He's really carved out a nice slot role, but he's sudden. He's sharp and he's tough. Every movement rips up blades of grass. Very, very quick in and out of breaks. Tough after the catch. Will break tackles through contact. He'll break tackles with speed and elusiveness. He's everything you want in that gadget role, whether you want to call him, Percy Harvin, or I don't think he's quite a Tyreek Hill as far as running down the field, but we're going to get him the ball in our hands around the line of scrimmage. He's perfect for an RPO game, jet sweeps, end arounds, quick game, screen game. He's really ascended his stock in 2020.
Bunch of explosive guys going down to Mobile that we've already talked about. But this guy that we're going to talk about next, Dane, opposite skill set from Kadarius Toney, and that's his teammate Trayvon Grimes, an Ohio State transfer. What does Grimes bring to the table?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, Grimes is basically an 85% version of Michael Pittman. He'll have some focus drops. He isn't as refined as a route runner, but he's well built. The length, the strength. He could be a mismatch in single coverage. Love his ability to high point. The toughness is outstanding. He had a catch this past weekend against Vanderbilt that was just ridiculous. To go up and attack the football, come down with it, secure it. He's got quickness for a big man too. So I'm definitely a fan.
Let's go over to a couple other guys that we've got here at the wide receiver position. And one player that has really piqued my interest. Dane, I know you've talked very highly about him. Ben, I want to go to you, though. Houston wide receiver Marquez Stevenson. What are your thoughts on the speedster from the Cougars?
Yeah, real quick on Grimes. A lot of people forget he was an Ohio State transfer.
Right, yep.
Came over when Florida's quarterback position was in turmoil, when it was actually Del Rio was the starter, then Felipe Franks. Then he gets hurt, and it's Kyle Trask. Now that they have some stability at the position, it looks like Grimes is really ascending his ability as well. But Marquez Stevenson at Houston is one of the fastest players in college football. Showed up on the freak list for an official 4.30 40, hitting 23 miles per hour. He's a kickoff returner. He has that over-the-top speed and the yards after catch element in the offense. If you need a burner, I don't know if he's in that kind of John Hightower conversation where the Eagles took him on early day 3. I kind of see that ballpark.
Interesting. Let's go to another burner, and that's Western Michigan wide receiver Dwayne Eskridge. This guy also played some corner for the Broncos over the last couple of years. He is an elite athlete. He's been on Bruce Feldman's freak list the last couple of years. Dane, your thoughts on Eskridge?
Yeah, he's bounced between corner, receiver. I think he's a better receiver prospect. No question about that in my mind. But he's a little undersized. He's 5'9", 184 pounds. But he can fly. He's really explosive, and he has a chance to show out in Mobile due to his athletic traits. So there's a little bit of questions about, what's his best fit? Can he win at every level? He'll have a chance to answer that at the Senior Bowl.
So from a guy that played both offense and defense, let's go to a player who his position on offense a little bit up in the air here. UCLA wide receiver Demetric Felton. We've been talking about him a lot as a running back. He had success just this past week for UCLA as a running back. Ben, what are your thoughts on Felton and how he got announced as a wideout instead of a running back here?
It's funny that you mentioned that because as I'm pulling up my notes as we're going through all these, I couldn't figure out if I had him at the receiver group or the running back group, but I had him with the running backs because he was a 4-star receiver coming out of high school. He got moved to a backfield role. They still love to throw to him out of the backfield. And then some weeks he may just have 30 carries out of the backfield. He's a satellite back. He's very similar to Kadarius Toney, just used slightly different. But I think he's a position and a skill set that everybody is kind of coveting and valuing at the NFL level.
So when you've got Eskridge, who's got the offense-defense versatility, Felton's got that positional versatility. Remember, can bounce between running back, receiver. Remember the Senior Bowl had Antonio Gibson last year. He was a receiver at Memphis that they played at running back. Looks like they'll do the opposite here.
Or even like
Felton.
a Naheem Hines, we saw yesterday make big plays. He was a guy who played in the slot for NC State those first couple of years.
Yeah, and then you look at LSU's Racey McMath. He brings versatility in that he can impact both offense and special teams. That's where he's been most known for his contributions at the college level. He's got 14 catches so far this year. year, just under 14 yards per catch. But his ability to play on special teams at his size, I got to tell you, every LSU teammate I talked to this offseason raved about McMath. Obviously, the season hasn't gone the way that they had hoped from a production standpoint, ultimately offensively, but this is a guy that a lot of people will have their eyes on down in Mobile. Let's go to the offensive line. And Ben, I know you had to be excited. This was not a surprise. Liam Eichenberg from Notre Dame heading down there.
Fran, you know, in the dugout when the pitcher has the no-hitter going for 7 innings, that's Eichenberg's 2020. It's been perfect so far. Don't say anything and ruin it. Don't jinx it. But he's having a great season with that Notre Dame Fighting Irish as they've really ascended, knocked off Clemson. But Eichenberg's been a stud at left tackle. Couple things I wanted him to correct from his junior tape. Wanted him to get a little bit stronger, a little nastier. He's done that. He looks much more powerful. Want to see that edge after the play. Couple flaws. You know, he's a little high in his kick steps. He's a two-handed puncher, which can get him in trouble from time to time. He's a little ho-hum out there. It's a little Anthony Costanzo, a little Mitchell Schwartz. Those are two really good NFL tackles that I know any team would want in Eichenberg holding down their blind spot.
I tweeted this out Friday night after the announcement. I feel Eichenberg is going to be the riser of this tackle class when it's all said and done. Dane, he's not the only tackle, though, for Notre Dame heading down to Mobile. Robert Hainsey on the other side also heading to the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, Hainsey's the type of player that grows on you. Plays right tackle for the Irish, but I think he's a guard prospect. Shorter arms, which forces his timing to be perfect. I really like the way he works hard to keep blocks centered and tie up defenders. He's an interesting player who I don't think gets enough love. Again, I think he's a better guard prospect, and hopefully that's where he plays in Mobile.
Another player I know, Dane, you're very high on is Oklahoma State's tackle, Tevin Jenkins. We talked about his teammate earlier in Tylan Wallace. What does Jenkins bring to the field?
Well, yeah, speaking of players who don't get enough love, and speaking of players who I think are going to be risers in Mobile, Jenkins is that guy for me. He's just a mauler. A little bit of a waist bender, and he's got a few bad habits he needs to iron out, but he looks to manhandle rushers. He usually gets his way. He's my 4th highest ranked senior tackle at this point, just behind Eichenberg. So, I think Jenkins could be on Eichenberg's level, no question.
Let's go to a guy that plays on the interior now for Penn State, a 3-year starter for the Nittany Lions. Ben, let's talk about the local guy, Michael Menet from Berks County, just outside Reading.
Yeah, plays center for Penn State, 30-game starter, team captain, over 2,000 snaps played, has played some right guard too. He was a 5-star, highly coveted recruit that played a lot of tackle in high school. So he's a guy with some versatility, experienced player, solid day 3 player that I think could play either guard spot or center for you.
And let's go over now to the defensive side. A bunch of guys announced on the defensive side, a bunch of pass rushers. We'll go to Miami first. Quincy Roche, the Temple transfer. Dane, your thoughts on Roche and what he could prove down in Mobile?
Yeah, and Roche's the type of player who he's going to make it because he's tough. The effort's terrific. He's a quick player, a little stiff. The average traits are going to be tougher for him to overcome versus NFL blockers. So I think the one-on-ones, that's where it's going to be important for him in Mobile. He's going to have to show that he can win when just speed doesn't get the job done.
Let's go over to Notre Dame. And for me, we talked about the 2 tackles. They added the 2 pass rushers from the Fighting Irish as well. And I'll talk about both these guys. I just studied them on Sunday. That's Dalen Hayes and Ade Ugodenji. And I think with both guys, both of them I think are well-rounded players. I don't think either of them is going to really impress you athletically. I think Hayes probably just has a little bit more juice. But I think when you look at both guys, they could set the edge. They've got some length to them. They've got the ability to turn the corner a little bit and give you a little bit of juice. But ultimately, I think they'll be more known as well-rounded backups in the NFL. They prioritize size on the perimeter there for Notre Dame. We saw those seniors last year, that ability to set the edge and then also get home. I think you see that with these 2 guys, with Hayes and with Ogundenji. Now let's go, Dane, down to Vanderbilt. Their pass rusher, Dayo Odenigbo. You've been big on this kid as well.
Yeah, he's super long, almost 36-inch arms, the heavy hands. He can bounce blockers around. There aren't really a ton of reasons to watch Vanderbilt this year, but Dayo is definitely one of them. And I think he has the traits to be a top 100 pick. And how he performs in Mobile could help him kind of, get out of that Vanderbilt shadow and show that, he is a big-time player. Fran, real quick, going back to those Notre Dame guys, who'd you like better, Hayes or Ogundenji?
I liked Hayes a little bit better, but I had them both very close. I would say I liked Hayes a little bit more, though.
Could top 100 guys or just outside?
I would say just outside if I had to guess.
Yeah.
Especially for Hayes, I think just outside. I think he's probably early day 3 would be my guess.
Yeah, we see them same.
Yep. All right, well, let's go over to the small school guys. We got a Buffalo pass rusher, Malcolm Kuntz. Ben, tell us, I know you're going to talk a little bit, you're talking shortly about another Buffalo player, but Malcolm Kuntz heading down to the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, they quietly have a handful of prospects to consider, but really experienced senior player, 6'3", 250. He's a little undersized, but I think has a really good combination of being athletic, good at the point of attack, plays with a really high motor and foot speed, led the MAC in pressures last year. Also, I think had 9 sacks, first team all conference as well. So he's going to have to kind of, I think, hang his hat on some special teams. I don't know if he's a terror enough rushing the passer and sub packages, but you go down to the Senior Bowl, maybe you have a positional fit off ball. So he's one of these guys. I want to see what else can he do.
Another guy that I think is going to be very interesting to see in Mobile is Osa Odigizua. I remember his brother Owamabe coming out of UCLA a few years ago. It goes to the Giants, didn't quite work out. What does Osa bring to the table, Dane? What are we going to see from him in Mobile?
He's really interesting because he's a little bit of a defensive end, a little bit of defensive tackle, but I think it gives him versatility to play outside over the offensive tackle, or he could play inside the guard. Really relies on that quickness, that hand strength to win. He was a 3-time state wrestling champ in high school, and I think that definitely translates to the football field.
And he's got a very similar body type to a guy we talked about last week in this segment, and that's Malik Herring from Georgia, and also a very similar body type to Tulane's Cameron Sample. Ben, what does Sample bring to the table?
Yeah, Sample's interesting. He's 6'3", 280. It's a bit of a defensive end, defensive tackle hybrid.
Yep.
When he is inside, he's a little undersized, but he can win with quickness, plays a good natural leverage. Having that interior rush upside, I think, is key for your stock as a prospect that you go sliding at 3-tech. But halfway through November this year, was 3rd in the country in QB pressures. And he has a teammate hunting quarterbacks too. So Teron Jackson as well. So he's a guy that's been productive, positional versatility, strong player, active player, checking a lot of boxes.
Some off-ball linebackers that I know as a group, the three of us are really excited about. North Carolina's Chaz Surratt heading down to Mobile. Ben, not a surprise because we were both really high on Surratt, but what are your thoughts on him heading to the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, really interesting player coming over from that quarterback position, but he seems like one of the best 3-down linebackers in this class. Can cover tight ends out of the backfield. He's good sideline to sideline range. He's a good blitzer, good QB spy. He's smart being a former quarterback. He's been active and very productive player. He's really been one of the darlings of this college football season. I'm interested to see where people view him in the pecking order. Do you get a little more excited about maybe a Dylan Moses? Or is Chaz Surratt maybe a, not a ho-hum linebacker, but a safer pick? I really see he's kind of trending towards a Bobby Wagner style of player.
And a guy that I think is going to be in that discussion as well, when it's all said and done, honestly, is LSU's Jabril Cox. Dane, I know you're intrigued by the North Dakota State transfer making his first start this year in the SEC.
And he's played a little up, a little down, as most of that LSU defense has this season. Transferring from the FCS level, there's got to be a little bit of a transition there for him. But he's been productive. He's second on the team in tackles. He's got a pair of interceptions through 6 games. Even though I don't think this has been the storybook ending for, to his college career after he was an FCS All-American at North Dakota State, I think it's going to end up benefiting him in the long run because what he's been asked to do in that LSU defense, what he's picked up, and I think we'll be able to see that down there in Mobile.
Another guy who transferred from a team this summer, Jabril Cox going from North Dakota State to LSU. Tony Fields goes from the Pac-12 at Arizona out to the East Coast to West Virginia, and that's where Fields now one of the best players on a good West Virginia defense. Ben, take us through what Fields brings to the table. I know you're high on him.
All right, there's a couple guys I gave a collective fist pump as they got the nod to the Senior Bowl. Tony Fields, I love this kid. Not enough people are talking about him in a national conversation coming over from Arizona. He's played 2,500 snaps in his career, plays the Mike linebacker, but he moves like a safety. He's tough, he's physical, he's edgy. Saw him in person last year against Oregon. Listen, Oregon crushed Arizona, but this number 1 linebacker for Arizona was making every tackle, getting chippy post play, mixing it up with the other team. Just like, who is this kid? And then you watch him West Virginia. He's sub-rushing. He's QB spying. Excellent pursuit. He's a little undersized at 6'1", 220 to be playing Mike linebacker. That's kind of the way the position is trending. I think he's tough. He's physical. He's athletic and not being talked about enough, in my opinion. That whole defense of West Virginia is playing really good ball this year.
And another guy I know you're high on, he's a little bit different of a player in terms of body type and position fit, but Jeremiah Moon from Florida, kind of half pass rusher, half linebacker. Is he a Sam? How do you kind of view Jeremiah Moon, and what can he prove down in Mobile?
Man, he is interesting. It seems like Florida always has these types. I can't remember the kid that came out 5, 6, 7 years ago that ended up with us at the Eagles, another tall, long edge rusher.
Alex McAllister.
McAllister. That's what he's like, though. He's 6'6", 230. He's a tall glass of water. He's loose. He has tons of spin moves and arm over moves. He's just so inconsistent. He hasn't been productive. It seems like he keeps getting leapfrogged on the roster by guys like Ja'Kai Polite, 2 years ago, and then CeCe Jefferson. And all of a sudden, this year, you have Brenton Cox Jr. getting a lot of sacks. He just is never the guy he was supposed to be. He was a 5-star top recruit. He looks the part, just so inconsistent. But I think he's playing better this year, particularly at the point of attack. I'm telling you, Fran, he looks good. He is tall. He's long. People are going to certainly be drawn to him. He just needs to produce more when he's on the field.
Let's go down, round it out. 4 DBs left. One of them is a corner. That's Rodarius Williams from Oklahoma State. Dane, give us the scoop here on Rodarius Williams.
Well, the older brother of former LSU corner Greedy Williams, now with the Browns, banged up. Rodarius, he's been one of the steady risers this season. He's playing confident. He's relying on his length to disrupt passing windows. And they usually leave him on an island, and he hasn't disappointed. So he's definitely been one of the senior risers this year.
And then we talked about earlier in the show with Anthony Patch about these Cincinnati kids, the guys that come out of this program. We talked about Jason Kelce and Brent Selleck and Trent Cole. Ben, could James Wiggins, the safety, he's heading down to Mobile, could he be next in line here of an early day 3 pick from Cincinnati who finds a way to stick and become more than just a good role player?
Absolutely, and they have prospects on both sides of the ball, and I would tell anyone, if you see Cincinnati on TV, watch them. They are fun to watch, both sides of the ball, particularly on defense. They wear all black, and they are nasty out there. They play very physical, but we've been hearing about James Wiggins for a while because he was initially a commit to the University of Miami. He was a highly coveted kid. I feel like he's been on the freak list for like 3 or 4 years now, but he had that major ACL tear early in his college career, sidelined him, but he's healthy now. He's explosive. He's a ball hawk. He's a strong player. Will easily, what did he put up? 20 reps at 225 to get himself on the freak list. 5'11", 205, strong player, squatty player, athletic player. I'm really excited to see what he looks like down there in Mobile.
Couple guys left here. Missouri's Josh Bledsoe. We talked about Ty Gillespie, his teammate last week. Dane, what does Bledsoe bring to Mobile?
And not quite as talented as Tyree Gillespie, his safety teammate there at Missouri, but I think he does a great job recognizing run pass, and then he understands field leverage. That gives him a head start on how to make a play. Pretty reliable in the open field. Can he cover? That's something that I think teams are going to question. Teams are going to want to have answered down there in Mobile.
And then last one here, Ben, take us home. Florida's Sean Davis. What does Sean Davis bring to Mobile?
He was a little undersized throughout most of his college career. It seems like this year they're playing a lot more on the back end. He's a through and through post player. Last year he was down in the box and playing the slot a little bit more as they had some injuries and trying to figure out where to play these guys like Trey Dean and some of those defensive backs. They have a lot of bodies back there, but trying to figure out where their positional fit was. But Florida has a lot of experience on the back end, whether it's Sean Davis or Steiner. He may not be the last of the Florida defensive players heading to Mobile.
Interesting. Well, guys, let's get into this week's action now as we take stock of what happened this past weekend. Let's go to our game balls. Dane, I'll let you kick things off here. Who was the standout player for you from this past weekend in college football?
Well, we need to give some love to Michael Penix, Indiana quarterback, after his performance in Columbus on Saturday. It came at a loss, but it was a close loss. He finished 27 of 51, 491 yards, 5 touchdowns, dealt with a lot of drops and breakdowns in coverage or in protection as well. But he kept coming back for more. So, he's a lefty with a pretty clean stroke. The ball comes out low, but he delivers. And small windows, they don't intimidate him. So just really impressed with how he performed. Only a redshirt sophomore. I don't know where he fits right now in the quarterback rankings, but I think he's done enough to at least earn the attention from NFL scouts to say, all right, we need to take him seriously.
So for me, I watched Bedlam, Oklahoma State Saturday night, and Ramondre Stevenson. I watched Oklahoma early in the season when it was just like Big 12 and not too many other teams playing, and then I've taken a couple weeks off, right? Coming back, Stevenson is a hammer. I mean, he's 6 foot, 246 pounds, and just a bowling ball downhill. He scored a bunch of touchdowns already this year. He actually didn't score in this game, but they could not get him, especially second half. I mean, he ends up rushing for over 140 yards. Screen game, he had over 50 yards receiving. Really physical downhill, just a tank to be able to get. And then even as a lead blocker on runs, he was getting people to the ground. So watching Ramondre Stevenson, who is a senior, to participate in this game, I thought he was really kind of the difference maker. They made some big plays in the passing game, but I thought Stevenson was the guy that really kind of put this game on ice for Oklahoma. Ben, where you got for your game ball here?
I'm going to go over to, once again, the Buffalo Bulls. Their running back, Jarrett Patterson, a pedestrian, 301 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns, 16 first downs. It's 163 of those yards coming after contact. Pretty pedestrian game by Jarrett Patterson standards. This is a guy last year that set a school record, nearly 1,800 yards rushing, with almost 1,200 yards after contact. And that's after being the MAC Freshman of the Year. And I don't know what it is against Bowling Green, but this 301 yards capped off an even better performance from last year where he ran for 296 and 6 touchdowns. And he's a little undersized. He's 5'9", 195, but that's the same ballpark as some other guys. Darrington Evans went in the 3rd round. Anthony McFarland went in the 4th round. Jason Huntley went in the 5th round. If that's where they go right in the meat of the draft, I'm putting Jarrett Patterson right in that 3rd, 4th round ballpark.
And what I love about you giving Patterson as your game ball is that he played like last Tuesday night or last Wednesday night.
That's right. He definitely kicked off the college football week. It feels like forever ago at this point.
It does. But then you gave your one play takeaway was another guy who didn't play on Saturday. I believe Zaven Collins. This play came from Friday night.
It did. I had all my guys picked out before the weekend.
You didn't even need to watch on Saturday.
And one last love to Buffalo. They have a left tackle paving a lot of lanes for Patterson. Right. KO'd Awasika, I believe his name. I apologize if I butchered that. Fran, I see you shaking her head. I'm sure I butchered it on the pronunciation sheet. But Tulsa linebacker Zaven Collins had a pick 6 to seal the game against Tulane in double overtime on 3rd and goal. Quarterback had some pressure. It popped up. Wasn't too impressive of an interception, but it was impressive watching that big 6'4", 260-pound linebacker run 90 yards in a straight line. And big strides. Those arms were pumping. He flew down that field in a hurry. Coming off a game-sealing interception the week before against SMU, back-to-back weeks with interception. So a big couple of weeks, big month for Zaven Collins.
Dane, who gets your one-play takeaway this week?
I went with Davion Nixon, defensive tackle at Iowa, who leads the Big Ten in tackles for a loss this year. He was pretty terrific against Penn State. 5 tackles, 1.5 in the backfield. He had a sack. But, I mean, the one play, speaking of kind of game-sealing interceptions, return for touchdowns, this guy, he floated into the flat, found the ball, picked it off, and how many defensive tackles are taking it back 71 yards? I mean, just ridiculous. And even more impressive is halfway down the field, he gave a little Euro step to the quarterback trying to take him down from behind. And not only that, but he switched the ball into the other hand and took it the rest of the way. I mean, just a really, really impressive play that I think shines the light on a guy that's having an impressive season. Like I said, leading the conference in tackles for loss. I didn't know much about him coming into the year. He's a junior who was more of a backup last year. So, I think he's really coming into his own now as a first-year full-time starter for the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, he started the season with 4 sacks against Northwestern. That got on my attention. But what was he doing in the flat?
They had him drop a little bit. I don't know. But, hey, they must have knew the screen was coming. And honestly, maybe it wasn't by design. Maybe he sniffed out the screen from the start and put himself in that position. So, just a really impressive play.
I wrote down Matt Ioannidis. I wrote down he's pretty stout against double teams. You see the effort, the urgency. He's got some short area burst. That first game, Dane, throw on that Northwestern tape. He really flashed some pass rush upside.
I watched that game, and then after this game, I watched the Northwestern tape and the Michigan State tape, and both those games, he definitely flashed. You see the quickness, you see the ability to work off contact. He's. I don't know that he belongs in the top 2 rounds, but he's definitely somewhere right after that trying to fit his way into the mix.
For him to do well against the Fighting Reese Davises, I mean, that speaks very well for his tape. Obviously, Northwestern getting another big win this past weekend. I'm going to go out west because the game after I watched Bedlam, I went over. Utah got their first game of the season this past weekend, which is crazy, the week before Thanksgiving, but had to watch the Utes go up against USC. It was a fun game to watch last year. I believe that was a Thursday or a Friday night game last year here on Saturday night. I'll tell you what, there were a couple different plays I thought about going with for my one play takeaway from this one, but the leaping interception by USC junior safety Talanoa Hufanga was awesome. I mean, it was the middle of the third quarter. It was a terrible decision to make this throw. It was a young quarterback, throws across his body late on the other side of the field. But it was an outstanding play by Hufanga because he had to drive on an intermediate route, flip his hips, get back in reverse, climb the ladder, time the jump over the receiver, come down and make the play. Just outstanding ball skills from Hufanga. And I thought, to me, I have not studied him yet, but for me, that was a really nice, all right, I'm excited now to study Hufanga after seeing that play down the field.
USC's played 2 games so far. In true sophomore, I should have picked him to be my down-the-road freak show. True sophomore Drake Jackson has been a terror. Him and
awesome.
Kevon Thibodeau really will be first-round picks next year. Will be through and through, no doubt. And that interception there, Fran, of course, off of pressure of Drake Jackson.
Yep.
Well, let's go right
Drake
to our
Jackson.
down the road
He
freak
could
shows.
be a top 10 pick. He is that good. He even last year as a freshman, you could see it. He is a really impressive guy.
A lot of
stood
spin
out.
moves. He's
I
playing
think
stand-up. Yep.
In that Utah game last year, I think, Ben, he might have been my down-the-road freak show in that game that I watched from these two teams last year.
We'll check the books.
We'll check the tape.
Receipts.
We'll check the tape.
Check the receipts.
All right, well, Ben, take us through your down-the-road freak show this week.
Ohio State, true sophomore, another 5-star behind the scenes. I just picture this iRobot lab. We're just bringing another one up here, and that's Garrett Wilson. Huge game against Indiana, 7 for 169 and 2 touchdowns. Just very quietly had 100 yards in every game in 2020. That's all I got. I'm not studying him yet. True sophomore. He's not eligible. I got other guys to watch, but put his name down in your futures list, and we'll be watching him and talking about him next year.
I'm gonna one up you here, and I'm gonna go with a true freshman wide receiver for Oklahoma because they're just churning out first round picks every year. Guys, I'll tell you, he only had 65 yards receiving in the game, but he had one of the biggest plays of the game that I almost used for my one play takeaway, and that was Marvin Mims. He had this crazy, leaping back shoulder throw, diving to the ground catch was awesome. But this kid looks electric. I'm excited to dive deeper into him. I guess we're talking 2 years from now, but certainly a name to keep earmarked for the future. Dane, who's your down the road guy here?
He's not related to Denzel, is he?
I looked it up, and I don't believe so, no.
Well, a guy I know will be studying it next summer because he'll be a rising junior, Cincinnati corner Ahmad Gardner, who, Cincinnati, they just, on defense, they're well coached. They're disciplined. Pretty good game over the weekend, and Gardner showed out like I think he does it every week. 6'1", 190 pounds, Detroit kid who brings toughness and length to the position. So I'm excited to dive more into him over the summer.
Yeah, he's another Cincinnati kid, by the way. We'll keep talking about all the guys coming from this Bearcats program. Guys, let's go real quickly into 3 guys that we've studied over the last week. Ben, I'll let you kick things off here. Who's a guy that you've put some extra work in and you came away really impressed with since last
Well, I had to after all the big plays this guy's been making on TV right in front of my face. It's Indiana senior receiver Ty Freifogel. He made a bunch of highlight plays, one-handed catches, really showed out last week against Ohio State on national TV. But he's a senior. He's got good size at 6'3", 215. He's kind of a possession receiver. He makes a lot of tough grabs. He's competitive at the catch point. He's a tough player. We've seen some highlight one-handed grabs and some nice adjustments. But these are always kind of a pro-con trait because the reason he's so good at the catch point and contested because he doesn't separate particularly well. I really question his long speed, whether he has the twitch to get in and out of breaks. But he's having a huge season. In his last 3 weeks, he's got over 500 yards, 6 touchdowns. I love this one nugget from my buddy over at Indiana that his high school football coach first saw him playing basketball. He had a 2-handed reverse dunk. So this is a guy that can jump out the building. He's athletic. Just to question his speed down the field and if he get himself open. His dad played at Ole Miss as well, so has a nice pedigree in the family. But he's been a nice, productive receiver. I hope he can make his way through special teams. He's got good size, and he's having a really nice year.
So I'm going to go with the 2 North Carolina backs. I mentioned Michael Carter earlier. I don't want to get too deep into him just because I talked about him earlier in the segment. But a good player. I liked Michael Carter, well-rounded player. The guy that I came away with really, really liking, though, was Javonte Williams, the junior for North Carolina. 5'10", 220 pounds. Number one, extremely competitive. You have got to bring it if you want to get this guy to the ground. He's got really impressive balance and body control. He's a powerful kid. He can lower the shoulder, run through first contact. Arm tackles alone, not going to get him to the ground. But he's got a little bit of juice too. He can get to the sideline. He can gear up and gear down on command. He's got some athleticism to him. So he's not just a big bruiser between the tackles. Loved him in pass protection. Really good eyes, good strength, good effort. Loved what he brought, especially as an underclassman in pass protection. And even as a pass catcher, they'll use him on sail routes. They'll run him on Texas routes. They'll do different things with him as a pass catcher. He fights the ball a little bit at the catch point, but overall, I thought he had some third down value. And then just, going back to the run game, I liked his vision. Really decisive zone runner and really patient gap scheme runner. So scheme versatile player that I think can really fit into any system in the NFL, and he excels at making that first man miss, and he does it in multiple ways. I talked about his power. I talked about his balance. I talked about his vision, his burst. He's also got a little bit of wiggle and shake to him in the hole. He uses the stiff arm well. So this is a guy constantly staying alive. He's got some athletic traits. He's powerful. He's competitive. He's got good vision. Guys, I didn't really find any big negatives watching Javonte Williams. I really, really liked his tape. Kind of like a souped-up David Montgomery at Ohio State. Like, that's kind of how I saw Williams. Obviously, Montgomery has not been great in the NFL, but just in terms of, like, skill set and help people kind of envision what we're looking at, I really like Javonte Williams. I'm excited to do more work on him in the future.
Do you think he could be, maybe challenge Najee Harris for running back 2 in this class?
I think he could. I was very impressed with Williams when it's all said. Now, I did 2 games. So, a lot more work left to do. But from what I saw, he was a really impressive player. Dane, who was yours here?
I went with J.C. Horn, who officially declared after opting out of the season after Will Muschamp was fired. So I just finished Horn's report and did all my background work on him and all that. And it's interesting that he, obviously people know he's Joe Horn's son, but he didn't play football until his junior year of high school. He played Pee Wee and all that, but he was a basketball player. That's how he viewed himself. And then he goes and plays football, plays receiver and corner in high school, and he set a school record with 12 interceptions over his last 2 years. So that kind of put him on this path. And look, he's just a really physical player who the length, the athleticism, he matches up well versus size. What I love is how he shows more ownership for the catch point than most receivers that he's covering. He has the route recognition has improved the last 3 years. The aggressive nature to his game is a pro and a con. He's the type of corner who's just going to immediately look for the official after each play to make sure no flags were thrown. He had 5 penalties in 7 games this season, which is more than you want to see. But does he need to refine the discipline, the finishing skills? Yeah, but he's a long, agile athlete, outstanding instincts. The bloodlines are there. The competitive mentality are there. It's all there. He reminds me of an Aqib Talib type of player, starting press man corner in the NFL.
So, guys, I just went back and counted. We have talked about 48 players in this segment. So we'll do 3 more. Let's round it out here. We're going to go with our on-the-clock segment. Let's bring in Chris McPherson. Let's get it going.
On the clock.
All right, well, let's have some fun here at the end of the show and on the clock, where we welcome in Chris McPherson. C-Mac, we're here now. It's a tight one now, man. I've got 4 points. Ben's got 4 wins. Dane, who jumped out to an early lead, I believe he jumped out to a 3-1-1 lead, has not won in a few weeks here. So let's see. It's 4-4-3. What are your thoughts here as we enter in, what is this, week 12 now of doing this segment?
Well, I guess we should hand it to Dane so we can just go on to next week and everyone's all even Steven. So we can see where this one's going already. So
we don't want
feeling the pressure now. Feeling the pressure.
Well, so real quick, and I'm going to turn this over to Ben because every week I'm trying to come up with new questions for this segment, right? All right, what's a different way to talk about a certain position and talk about players? And Ben actually presented this as an idea back on Friday. Ben, what is it that made you want us to talk about the position and the trait that we were talking about today?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I don't really know. I can't remember if I was watching a safety running the alley, making plays, or if I saw a play on Thursday or Friday night college football I was watching. I don't really remember how it started, but I think I saw somebody running the alley and was like, oh, that guy runs the alley really well. Why don't we profile a safety that runs the alley in our on the clock segment, since we did the safety position earlier, but more of a turnover machine, playmaking safety. Yep. in that profile, being able to run the alley. You see every Saturday, every Sunday, a lot of perimeter action. It's an important position. I thought it'd be an interesting kind of player profile to dig into.
If I remember correctly, you were watching the film of the Arizona Cardinals against the Seahawks from Thursday Night Football and watching Budda Baker, the richest safety in the history of the game, running the alley against Seattle.
Fran, you are 1,000% correct. And I swear I did not remember what triggered the thought. So I'm glad that you did. And that was a heck of a play.
Yeah. So when we talk about running the alley, just real quick before just to paint the picture, running the alley is when you see a safety come from depth. So not lined up in the box or up in press coverage or off the edge, but he's lined up from depth. And then he runs the alley, that area between, we'll say, the tackle box and the sideline, between the tight ends and the receivers, we'll say, and he's able to finish a tackle one-on-one. So when we say we want to see a safety run the alley and finish, that's what we're referring to, and that is the discussion today. Which safety in the draft is best at running the alley? And I had first pick. Dane's got second pick. Ben rounds us out with the third pick. And look, I could have gone with any safety in the country here at CMAC, and I thought
well, you have the first pick, so of course you could have gone with any
I could have gone with anybody, and so I'm looking around, and there were a bunch of guys I thought about. There were some good ones. I remember talking about Hamza Nasruddin from Florida State a couple weeks ago. This guy is an explosive athlete. Paris Ford is really physical and violent coming downhill. He's a fearless player downhill. Those guys might have the prettier, the sexier plays, but if we're talking about a safety being a reliable tackler, being a guy you can count on running the alley. Because remember, they are the last line of defense. I need a guy who is consistent and who is reliable. And rep after rep after rep, watching Middle Tennessee State safety Reed Blankenship, who is a senior, 6'1", 200 pounds. Watching him run the alley, he is one of my favorites in this class of what he can do. This guy, number one, stuffs the box score with what he can do. As a lot of big tackle numbers. He had over 100 tackles in 2018. He's always around the football. But then you watch him, and his ability to come down and finish one-on-one, and that takes timing, that takes athleticism, because you've got to be able to break down in the hole, come to balance, and then finish. But then also the play strength, the willingness, the technique to finish as a tackler. I saw all of those things from Reed Blankenship, and I think that is also mirrored with his ability on special teams. He's a great special teams player for Middle Tennessee State. But when I look at this kid's ability to come from depth and finish, to me, his consistency is his hallmark, and that's what I'm looking for at the safety spot, is a guy who can consistently get that running back to the ground one-on-one. We know how important this trait is in today's NFL, and to me, while some other guys might be more explosive and might have bigger highlight plays, oh man, look how those guys have more misses as well. There are so many guys that will come in too hot and are unable to finish one-on-one. To me, Blankenship is the guy that he's even Steven, will do it every single time on command. That's why, for me, my guy that I'm going with, Reed Blankenship from Middle Tennessee State.
So either Fran or Dane, what's his backstory? How does one end up at Middle Tennessee State, of all places here?
So he was at West Limestone High School. He was a 3-star recruit out of Athens, Alabama. But
did everything in high school: 1,000-yard passer, 1,000-yard receiver, 1,000-yard rusher, like 300 tackles on defense. He did everything in that little high school in Alabama.
Yeah, and so just a guy that kind of fell through the cracks at a small school in Alabama, ends up at Middle Tennessee State.
Excellent, Ben. Any critiques?
No, he's a good player. He's tough. He's been on the field since freshman year. It was an all-freshman team. His first year there was all-conference player. His sophomore year, a knee injury in 2019 kind of kept his name out of the big news in the draft cycle, but he seems like he's healthy again and one of the tougher, more versatile players in college football that a lot of people don't know about.
Very, very interesting. So,
I'm going with a different approach this, CMAC. I'm going with the complementative nature, and we'll see.
But I don't know if I like this.
He's killing me with kindness. By the way, CMAC, he was on Bruce Feldman's freak list as well. I forgot to mention that. So a guy known for his athletic ability as well.
Team captain as well. Team captain.
Ben, I'm thankful this season of giving thanks. I'm thankful when you bring that edge to the segment. So now that you're not bringing it,
it's Thanksgiving week. I'm just trying to give back and play fair here.
One player I know you're thankful for, CMAC, is Eagles defensive end Brandon Graham. Blankenship's defensive coordinator Scott Schaefer was BG's defensive coordinator at Michigan. So a little bit of an Eagles connection there as well. Always, I gotta pull the strings where I got them. I gotta pull the strings where I got them. All right, so Dane, take us through. Who's your second pick here?
All right, so about more than a month ago, I fired up the Missouri-Alabama tape from this year, and I tell you, this Missouri defender wearing the number 9 jersey just kept popping off the screen. Like the first 10 plays, he's just showing out. And that's safety Tyree Gillespie for the Missouri Tigers. And the best way for that Alabama offense to create conflict for defenders, just get the ball in Jalen Waddle's hands. And that's what they tried to do in that game. A jet sweep to Jalen Waddle towards the field side. So a lot of space for him to create, make something happen. Gillespie wasn't having any of it. He flew down the field from a single high position, took Waddle off his feet for a minimal gain. Waddle's a special athlete, and it takes a pretty impressive player to run the alley like Gillespie did, showing the recognition to get a head start, the drive quickness to unlock his hips and then go, and then the fearlessness at contact. And it's not just that initial acceleration, it's the acceleration into contact that stands out for Gillespie. He's like a magnet to the ball in that way. He's not going to slow as he gets closer to contact. He'll actually speed up. So I'm really excited to see Gillespie show out at the Senior Bowl. He could be a sneaky top 100 guy for a lot of reasons, including his ability to run the alley like a bat out of hell. It's really an impressive thing to watch.
Dane, give me the background. Give me some of the vitals. What size? What's he bringing to the table from that standpoint?
Not the biggest guy. He's about 6 foot, just over 200 pounds. He's from Florida. Kind of got overlooked by the Florida schools. Missouri was able to get him, and he's developed nicely. When you look at the safety position, you want guys that have speed and then are fearless, and he's got both. So he's going to be, no offense to Middle Tennessee State and Conference USA, but I mean, this guy's doing it in the SEC against guys like Jalen Waddle and the caliber of athlete that we're talking about. That's why I thought I had to go with Gillespie for what he's doing here.
Reminds me a little bit of Tavarius Moore coming out of Southern Miss a couple years ago, ended up being a third-round pick. So similar type of ballpark, I think we're talking prospect-wise.
Fran, is he a one-hit wonder? I know Dane put on the tape against Alabama, and obviously that's the crown jewel of tape that all the scouts are going to be evaluating. But there are going to be other games that you might be like, not quite as good.
I'm going to be honest. I haven't done Gillespie yet, so it's tough for me to kind of rip. I will have one issue of response, though, to Dane. Middle Tennessee State, Kevin Byard has turned into one of the best safeties in the NFL, and this guy did it at a high level at Middle Tennessee State. Was one of the best players, certainly, in the draft coming out that year. You might have said, there are other guys at other conferences that have done it better, but this kid Byard has turned into a really great player out of the same program.
And Middle Tennessee, Missouri, that's cute, guys. Why don't we slide over to Southern California here, where we've been known to pump out some safety prospects in our day. And we're going to go to Talanoa Hufanga, C-Mac. He's 6'1", 215. That's 215 pounds, better size than Blankenship and Tyree Gillespie. You need that size to run the alley. But the first thing you have to be able to do to run the alley and be effective, C-Mac, is key and diagnose and trigger and get to the alley. And I think Hufanga does that better than anybody in college football. He's typically rolling down into the box anyway. He's more of a box safety than that back end post player, where he's making a lot of plays on the run, a lot of plays in the alley, sees it, hits it really fast, very physical on contact. Like Dane was just saying, the explosive nature to the point, but also through the point and through tackling and really imposing his will on ball carriers, not only in the alley and the run game, but perimeter screen action, blowing up blocking schemes out there, drive routes. There's a lot of action that happens there between those numbers in the tackle box, like Fran was referencing. And I think Hufanga blows up plays in that alley on a routine basis for USC.
Fran, any complaints there?
The issue with him is the injury, right, Dane? I know that's something you've done a deep dive on Hufanga, and the medical is the concern with him, right?
Yeah, he's going to be a non-starter with a lot of teams just because he's had numerous shoulder injuries. And that's why, when I was putting together my top 50, I thought Hufanga had the talent to be in there, but the medicals are just a mess for him. And I mean, to Ben's credit, part of the reason is because he does go so hard, and he does. Durability is a question with him because of the way he plays, that play style, that fearlessness, but a little bit of recklessness, and that's for a guy running the alley, that's what you want. But the durability will be a question mark.
Yeah, he's a bit of a crash test dummy. I think he has 2 collarbone breaks in his career. He's been on and off the field at USC, but that's really how he approaches the alley. He's coming through, and it's a car crash, and sometimes he takes the brunt of it. But he's going 100 miles an hour, and his body's kind of taking the price.
I don't need him to be healthy. I mean, we're just talking about from a trait perspective. It's like last week with the offensive lineman. It's like I don't need the guy who's going to look beautiful in pass protection. Simply, it's who's the best at run in the alley. So that's the
you can't run the alley if you're on the sideline, C-Mac. Best ability is durability.
That is true. So, three very, very interesting players here. Learning a lot here. I guess it's kind of like what are you looking for? And to me, I'm going to want the consistency. I'm going to want the guy who's going to be reliable time in, time out. So Reed Blankenship, I'm going to give you the win here, Fran. I mean, both Gillespie and Hufanga, very, very good arguments, kind of swaying me there a little bit toward the end. But, the biggest thing here is you need that reliability. So, not just the fact that he also helps out in special teams as well. So obviously a key factor there. So, but has been productive in his time there. It was just overall a good argument. So solid win for you, Fran.
Yeah, he's playing special teams. He's at Middle Tennessee. I'm sure he's substitute teaching and coaching the volleyball team and, plugging wherever it leaks.
It's good practice for his next occupation. Because I mean, it's a good thing he has special team experience because that's probably where he's going to play mostly in the NFL. But solid player.
Look, he runs the alley almost as well as I can make an argument, and I'm able to come up with the W. C-Mac, great job this week. I got to tell you did an outstanding job as the judge and jury for this week's debate. We'll talk to all three of you guys again soon.
Now it's time to hear from you, the fans, in the Draft Mailbag.
All right, let's wrap this show up here with Draft Mailbag. And again, before we get into the question, just a quick reminder, the best way to throw us your support, I can't tell you how important this is to me. If you can go on to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating, leave a comment. If you can leave the comment, leave a question, and we'll answer it here on the show. What's better than that? So really appreciate Ryan K823, who left a 5-star review and said, "Hey, friend, what strategies do you have for learning more about scouting and football? I've been in the scouting community on Twitter for the last few years, learned a lot from others, from YouTube and podcasts. What are other good ways to continue to progress as someone interested in football scouting? Thank you and love the show." So Ryan, really, really appreciate the question. It's something that one of the big reasons why, if you listen to the show over the summer, I am always bringing on evaluators from all over the business, right? So guys that are in the league, have been in the league, are trying to get into the league, just trying to talk through their philosophies and their processes and really kind of dig deep to make all of ourselves better. Because one of the things, and I've said this before on the show, one quote that really has always kind of stuck with me, Coach Golden, Al Golden gave me this when he was my boss at Temple. Once you're through learning, you're through. I'm always trying to soak up different ways. And it's not just with player evaluation, this is with everything, but always trying to find ways to improve. And to me, look, there's no better way than to keep watching football, not just college and with that mindset, with that prism of projecting to the NFL, but watching NFL football, right? I mean, just watching what works in the league right now, what's important, what's not as important, because it's always changing. I just had a great conversation with Ben on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast late last week. It was about Rashard Higgins, the wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns. And we talked about him coming out of college and his skill set. We said, how important is that skill set for the NFL when you're talking about value and positional fit and ultimately what allows a guy to reach that upside of being a true impact starter? And, I think it's those kinds of conversations just help get the juices flowing, just help get the conversation going in terms of what you're looking for at every position. And I could have those kinds of conversations every single day, and it's great to be able to have the forum to be able to do that, whether it's here on this show, over on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, or just having those conversations. So, find somebody that also kind of sees the game and it's not the exact same way, but if you're able to have those conversations, that helps get those juices going. So being active on Twitter, that certainly is a good forum for that. Anybody that you can talk to, that you can learn from, is going to make you better, and that's the great thing about social media. One of the great things about it is that you've got access to all of these people. So if you get somebody to follow you back, you can jump into their DMs, you can send email exchange, all kinds of things. Then the other big thing, and we've had these guys on before, but I think that a great resource for a lot of people out there, the Scouting Academy. If you really want to even if you don't want to become a scout, but if you just really want to, if this is a really big passion for you and you want to get better at it, I mean, those guys, their track record is proven, right? We've had Dan Hatman on the show numerous times, and what they've been able to do to develop people and place them in with NFL teams, with college programs, all across football. It's just been great to be able to see how that program has grown and what they've done, and I think that's a great resource to use as well. So, Ryan, really appreciate the question, appreciate you listening, and thanks so much to all of you out there for your continued support of this show and all the rest of our podcasts here at Eagles Entertainment. We're going to be back a little bit later this week. It's a little bit earlier. Hopefully we'll have you for your Thanksgiving commute. Please, though, everybody stay safe. Be smart. Stay safe. Stay healthy. We'll talk to you later this week right here on the Journey to the Draft podcast, driven by AAA.